Hello and welcome to First Contact, the world's first podcast where we openly discuss all things relating to humanity's preparation for open contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. I'm your host, Eesha Patel. If you are loving this content, please be sure to join us in the First Contact Facebook community and let us know what you think. Let's dive into another exciting episode of First Contact. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of First Contact. I'm Eesha Patel and today we have Roger Stankovic. Roger is a UFO researcher. He's been researching this for a very long time. He's also done a bit of work with MUFON, which I'm excited to speak about today as well. And he's been proactively researching UFOs for a number of reasons. So firstly, Roger, why don't we begin by just going into a little bit of your story, how you got started into UFO research, and what is the reason that you're really proactively into this today?
Thanks for having me on the show, Eesha. And but basically, I got involved in research into UFOs many years ago when I was a teenager. Basically, I had a sighting, someone experiencer, and I won't go into great detail of that sighting, but it involved a light which was like an orb. Told this story multiple times on other podcasts, so it's just it feels a bit repetitive for me to actually go through it in detail. But after that sighting that I had, it had quite a you could say the ontological shock happened to me then, where I suddenly realized that basically I'd encountered something extremely strange and something that wasn't prosaic and something that was highly unusual and frightening, and basically that was piqued my curiosity in the subject, and that's why I started reading books about it and read as much as I could, to the stage where I actually started to network with other researchers. And then I got involved with MUFON because I wanted to actually do something proactive in the sense that I could actually receive reports and investigate those cases. So that's where I am now. Yeah.
That's quite a journey. And I think a lot of people, I've spoken to maybe 30, 40 people at this point, and a lot of them seem to have their own personal experiences before they get into this. I'm the same. I stumbled upon it myself. I'm now thick into the research of it because I'm a contactee and experiencer. I've had many contacts myself. And so, I think when you've had that direct experience, even if the rest of the world is telling you that there's some logical explanation for it, you just know that there isn't. I would like to make a request of you. I know you have shared this story so many times for other people, but myself and probably a lot of my listeners probably don't know your story. So do you mind giving us some of the details of that, just so we get a better idea of what you actually experienced that day?
Yeah. So it happened so long ago, and I think my memory of it is starting to I think sometimes I confabulate things in it because it was such a long time ago. I was only about 14 or 15 at the time, and I was living on a rural property at the back of the western suburbs of Sydney. So it was about 35 kilometres from Sydney, next to a reserve that was owned by Royal Prince Albert Hospital, which a lot of people, some of your viewers may know. There used to be a series on TV called RPA. My parents had a 25-acre property next to a property which was over 1,000 acres. So it was pretty not deserted, but not very populated, because there were just the sporadic farmhouses there and not many people because there were such large lots. So it was sort of like summer, because I remember wearing shorts and thongs. And I remember going out. I was at that age fairly bored, not many friends because we're on a rural property. I went out. What I used to do is to go out to the dams and just observe the wildlife out there. It was pretty pristine then. There was a lot of agriculture going on at the time. People, we had cattle, we were primary producers, so we had a lot of crops in terms of vegetables that we used to send to the markets. But I remember going to the dam one evening and it was started to get twilight, so it wasn't as dark as night can be, but it was sort of like, I'd say, because it's summer, it would have been about 8 p.m. It's starting to get quite dark, and I saw a light coming from the south. So I was facing east, coming from the south, and I could see it at the corner of my eye, but just looking forward, looking towards the dam, and it came fairly slowly, but no sound. And I thought, might be an aeroplane, whatever. And I just kept looking forward. But then I saw it come closer and closer and closer until it stopped right in front of me. And it was not that far away. It was probably maybe 300 or 400 meters away. So it's pretty close. And it just stopped and hovered, and then started to pop, like get larger in terms of a white circumscribed light. And it just got to the stage where it was about quarter size of the full moon. So it's pretty damn big. And I thought, what could that be? It cannot be a meteorite, cannot be a helicopter, no sound, cannot be an aeroplane. And I thought it piqued my curiosity. So I wasn't quite scared at that stage, but then it did this crazy maneuver where it, I can't remember exactly what it did, but it did something where it said to me, or like was trying to get me to understand that I am not anything normal. I'm something paranormal. And it just did this crazy maneuver. And that's when it really frightened me. I sort of thought, okay, this is something from an extraterrestrial craft. And then it just zipped down, landed, and lit up the sky, lit up the area as if it was sort of like daytime. And I just turned around and then just ran to the farmhouse full speed, got into the kitchen, pushed the door open, and then my parents were there as far as I'm aware. And my sister was there, and she remembered me coming in, and I was white as a ghost. And she said, you were sweating and you were panicked. And I just told them what I saw. And basically that's the whole experience. I should have stayed there to see what it was going to do, but I felt as if, I should not be there. I felt as if, I don't know. I mean, I didn't go through my mind that I was going to be abducted or anything like that. But I felt that it was, I don't know, just being in the presence of something like that would give you chills. And it did. Like it really spooked me. So that's it.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing.
That's right.
I can imagine, at that age, it would have been a very...
Yeah, I was pretty well a blank slate. I didn't know too much about UFOs or anything like that. And at that age, I suppose you're, sorry to interrupt you, but I suppose that, in fact, I think I was quite a skeptic, because I had this, I had a scientific, I wanted to become a scientist, and I did. And I had a very, pragmatic approach to things, and I didn't really believe in the paranormal or anything like that. And I think that this really spooked me. Sorry, keep going.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, like, at that age, you don't even have a framework really to process
No,
that.
no.
So I can imagine it would have been quite a out there experience for you, and quite shaping in many ways as well. I do find that a lot of the people that I speak with, if they've had experiences at childhood or adolescence, it shapes their whole reality, and then
it does
really,
well, your brain's not quite formed. I think that the brain still keeps developing till you're about 18 or 20 or even older. So your neural connections are not quite, there. And I think it did shape the way, I also had panic attacks when I was a kid, which was strange. I've only met one other person who I did a podcast with recently, who mentioned to me that he had panic attacks as a child, and it's very rare. But I don't know whether I could connect the two, because I don't remember any sightings when I was a child. But I know that when I was a kid, anything alien like a cartoon or something like that would give me, like, it would stress me out. Anything to do with space would stress me out. I just, the thought of seeing like a cartoon figure in the form of an alien would sometimes give me a panic attack. And I used to watch programs which were related, like sci-fi movies, sometimes would give me a panic attack where an alien was involved. So I don't know.
Is that before or after the sighting?
Even before. So it's very strange. Yeah.
Yeah, well, they say that a lot of these things, they sit in your subconscious. I mean, look, I'll just sort of jump ahead a few steps and say, like, I am fairly certainly convinced that people are chosen to have these sightings. Like, I don't think there's any level of coincidence in
Yeah, I've been told that by other people, and well, so be it. If I was chosen, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I think, on that thread, there's stuff that sits in our subconscious mind, and the fact that, you had this sort of fear that happened even before you'd had the experience, that kind of says to me that there is something almost predestined in who you are and what you're here to do. And also potentially memories. I mean, I can share with you my experience.
Yeah, I was about to say that. I was just going to say, what did you go through?
Well, yeah, when I was 7 years old, well, mine wasn't actually that negative. I'm quite lucky. I've had very positive experiences.
Oh, that's good.
I've never had like a fear or anything like that. I've experienced spontaneous healings. I've had very incredible experiences. But I remember when I was 7 years old, I had a dream that my family and I got taken up in a spaceship, and the beings were lovely. We had a great time, and I don't remember what happened on the spaceship. And then we came back, and I'd never seen any movies. I wasn't really reading books about this content. So at 7 years old, you think, where did that come from? And a few years later, must have been like year 4, year 5 in school, and we had a story writing competition. So I just wrote the story about my dream, and I won an award for it. I got congratulated, and taken up to the front of the assembly, and everybody's
amazing.
I'm like, well, it was just a dream, like, because the story was so like well written from a writing perspective,
Sure.
So they had like a good beginning and a middle and an end, and the teachers were loving it. They thought it was so creative, and I thought, well, I almost felt like I was an imposter for taking credit for that, because I thought, well, I didn't really create it. I mean, I just wrote about the thing that already happened.
Sure.
For me, it was just like this obvious thing. Now, it took me like probably another 20 years later for me to realize that experience probably actually happened.
Yeah.
So, and this is where I get goosebumps when I talk about this, because it was such a vivid experience in my mind, and none of my family remembers this. And this is, I feel like
in your dream, and here I am interviewing you now. In your dream, were your parents
we were all there. My mom, my dad.
No, but were they stressed out? Well, I know you weren't stressed out, but were your parents stressed out? No.
No, everybody was calm.
And they don't remember anything about it.
No one remembers anything. I mean, for me, I don't even know if I even told them about this. They might listen to the interview later and be like, what is she talking about? I don't think I even mentioned it to them, For me, I woke up, I had a dream and thought nothing of it, It took me about 20 years later. So I went through a big spiritual awakening in 2015, and then I stumbled upon these galactic consciousness and these beings through meditation. So before I had physical sightings, I was just stepping into that realm of consciousness, and through my explorations in consciousness studies, that's how I came across ETs. And about a year of sort of exploring that is what it took for me to then have my first physical experience. So I kind of went at it in a very different way compared to like a lot of the people you've probably interviewed and MUFON and things like that, because typically in MUFON, people have a physical sighting first, and then they're trying to make sense of it. Whereas for me, I had the telepathic connections for at least a year before I saw anything physical. So I knew who they were. I knew what they were doing. I'd already asked them about the spaceships. And then when I finally had my first physical experience, I knew exactly who it was and where they were. And I could see the craft in my mind's eye. Like, it was a very direct sort of contact. Anyway, we're digressing a little. So with this story, like when I was 7 years old, I believe now that likely actually happened, but I don't think about it as an abduction.
When you were having the dream, were you in a very deep sleep? Like, I mean,
I must
sometimes you
admit,
can dream. I have dreams, going on about dreams. Sorry to digress, but I have had dreams of UFOs, the actual craft, and I'm on the ground and I can actually see them. And I notice that when I wake up, it's one of the most deepest sleeps that I've ever had. Like I'm almost in a coma, you know. And I wake up and think, oh my, I haven't had them recently, but I used to have recurring dreams of seeing UFOs, but not being abducted by them or anything like that. But it's interesting, yeah, because I Googled up dreaming of UFOs, or you know, like, and you know, some people do, and I think, you know, that's interesting that some people actually do dream about things like
Well,
that.
dreams. Well, there's. I mean, so there's different types of dreams. There's dreams where your mind is processing, the day, like through sort of subconscious,
Yeah.
or whatever things are going on, like emotions, like processing emotions, processing events, things like that. Then there are dreams that are not really dreams. And I actually have a lot of this as well. I'm very familiar with lucid dreaming. I'm very familiar with astral travel. I'm very familiar with like having these like multi-dimensional type of experiences as well, where you're in your body, but you're actually having this experience. Like on some level, it's a very real dream. And those dreams for me are the ones that are the most vivid, and I can recall every single detail.
Right.
Because it's as real to me as if it's a memory.
Mm.
So I know when I have those types of experiences, I call them like nightly missions that I do. Like I go on these little nightly missions, and I get taken onto craft. I get taken onto different planets. I go and experience different.
Have you ever remote viewed, or have you tried doing
Yeah,
remote view?
absolutely.
You have, okay.
Not through like not through any of the methods that are out there on the internet, but so the way that I did it was through activating my Merkaba light body. And that allowed me to access my multidimensional self. So by accessing my multidimensional self, I was then able to travel to other planets and places. And sometimes how do you know? Like, how do you know that you're on Venus, or how do you know that you're on Mars? How do you know that these interactions with beings actually happened? And the way that I verified it was there were instances where we had multiple people having the same experience at the same time.
Right.
What I started doing was I started running these, like I call them activation events. And I used to run them on specific gateways. So like the 7-7, for example, or the Lion's Gate, or whatever, like spiritual kind of dates would crop up. And so I would have these activation events, and we would take a group of people into meditation, take them into this trance state, get them to activate their Merkaba light bodies, and then we would travel to a specific destination. And then, at the end, we would get everybody to share their experience, and there'd be multiple people in the room saying, I also saw this, I also heard this, I also received the same message. Yeah. So when you're in a shared field of consciousness, you get those levels of verification. Because if it's just you on your own, then, I mean, you can make up anything. It's imagination.
But when it's shared,
an imagination when you've got like 5 people in the room saying the same thing. So
now, the reason why I mentioned remote viewing is because it seems to me that it could be a similar process to what you're saying, where you're I won't use the term astro traveling, but I'm not sure exactly what process you're going through, but it might be similar and connected to what remote viewers do. Like Ingo Swann, he remote viewed Jupiter and found an extra ring on it, and they were saying, we don't want Saturn, we want Jupiter. And he goes, well, yeah, there's a ring around Jupiter, and it wasn't known. We didn't have telescopes that were, until we sent out I don't know, was it Voyager or whatever, that actually discovered the extra ring around Jupiter, a ring around Jupiter. So yeah, it's interesting.
I think there's similar mechanisms, and this is something I've talked about in my line of work quite extensively, because when you understand multidimensionality, one of the concepts that I often teach people is that we view in one dimension lower than the one that we're in. So for example, like we're in the 3rd dimension right now, which is it's everything physical. Then the 4th dimension is typically what I call the astral plane. So you have your ghosts, your paranormal sort of beings, like all that kind of stuff. Then you have the 5th dimension and higher levels of consciousness. And as you get to those higher levels, those are the layers in which I've met angelic beings or different types of consciousnesses. And you can kind of like categorize them in the levels of frequency or dimension that they are perceived, and you can change your consciousness depending on like who you want to connect with. So when it comes to remote viewing, most remote viewers will actually take their consciousness up into the fourth dimension and then view down into the third, because from the 4D, time appears as the multiple parallel timelines versus the linear time that we experience in the third dimension. But you go up another level from there and you say, okay, I'm going to take my consciousness into the fifth dimension. When you look down from the 5D into the 4D, what you see is time as a spiral, and physics is only just sort of getting into this, this concept of, spiral time and how time changes with mass and gravity. And there's a lot more to it. But essentially, when you understand how to take your consciousness through these levels of dimensional frameworks, you view one level into or down from the one that you're in. So if you're just in 3D, you look at a tree, you don't see the back of the tree, right? But you know it's there. The same way that remote viewers take their consciousness up into the fourth dimension, and then they'll see, into a house or into a space or into an event that's outside 3D time and space. So very, very similar concept, except you can take that same concept and apply it to everything in the multiverse. And that is exactly what I do when I'm traveling to other planets or connecting with starships or whatever else it is that I'm doing. Anyway, so your experience as a child, I find very interesting because, now that we've kind of shared this multidimensional framework, inside of that is also this concept of past lives or multidimensional lives. Right. And so when you have that experience as a child where there's a fear around it, what that says to me is that you've had some sort of negative experience in a past or multidimensional life that has maybe been a bit scary or not very good. Because the thing is, there's lots of beings in the universe out there as well. I'm sure you've come across this through your movement.
Maybe you are right. I mean, I've never had anyone tell me that, but it seems to be like, if you connect the dots, something could have happened to me at an earlier age. Where I didn't understand what was going on. I vaguely remember things on the foot of my bed as a child, and then like beings or something, but I really don't want to go there because, it could have been a dream, or it could be something that I was imagining. But I mean, well, it could be possible. I don't know.
Any hypnotherapist could probably help you.
I've been there, done that, and I can't be hypnotized, unfortunately.
Oh, really?
I tried to stop smoking. My wife gave me this $400 voucher to go and see a hypnotist to stop smoking. And I was sitting on the chair, and they say, relax, and now your left arm is going to lift up like this. And my left arm didn't want to do it. And I thought, well, I'm not going to do it if it's going to do it, it's going to do it on its own accord. If I'm actually hypnotized, and it didn't do it. And she said, oh, you're a tough nut to crack. And I thought to myself, well, I was trying to do it, but and then I had another session with a UFO researcher who was also a hypnotist, and he tried to take me back to that time where I saw that UFO. And I could see things clearer. Like, I remembered the dam, and I remembered the pump and the tractor that was there. But it's sort of like, I found it very difficult to actually get into that mindset of where I had to be for, But anyway,
it depends how you look at it. I mean, I have a lot of experience with consciousness related work as well. And I've done regressions and stuff, like I've facilitated them on people. And I'm also very difficult to hypnotize, but it depends on how receptive and willing you are to actually be hypnotized as well. And I find that when people aren't so easily hypnotized, they actually make very good multidimensional channels, because it means that you can hold your levels of consciousness even in a trance-like state. Because if you've got somebody putting you in a trance and you're still completely lucid inside of that, that actually is the perfect mechanism to channel and connect with multidimensional beings. So you might not be, able to quit smoking so easily, but you can probably connect with the Galactic Federation and have a great old chat with them, So, and I know that because my mind is exactly the same. Like, people try to regress me and I'm completely lucid in the whole thing. I'm like wandering around my mind going, oh, wow, this is cool, And not everyone can do that. It's actually a very good skill to have. If you are naturally capable of being lucid in trance,
Right.
there's a lot of untapped potential and gifts that you've got sitting there, which I think if you were to explore it, you would find that you could very easily connect with galactic consciousnesses.
Or maybe if my next trip to Perth, you can regress me.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're welcome here anytime.
Thank you.
Look, I do want to get into some of your research as well. I mean, I could talk about this other stuff all day, every day. It's so interesting for me. But I do want to get into a little bit of your research and also some of the some of the cases that you've maybe looked into, because I find that stuff really interesting as well.
Yeah. So I could pick a couple of cases, and I've mentioned them probably a few times. But we've got a current case where we're looking at. I've finalised it because I have to finalise the case before I mention it. If it's still under investigation, I can't mention it. But there was a case recently of a lady who was actually travelling in her camper van going north to Charleville in Queensland, which is sort of like central, sort of like southern Queensland, going to whatever destination she was going to, book Charleville. And basically she had an experience on the road where it was partly cloudy day, about midday, or about it would have been about 1 p.m. and just cruising along, and all of a sudden she sees this thing on her left-hand side up in the sky that looks like a green teardrop shaped circumscribed. It's not a cloud, but it's a well circumscribed object, and it's coming towards her. And she's thinking, that's strange. I wonder if it's just a swarm of locusts or a flock of budgerigars or something like that, because that's typical for that sort of like area. And it kept coming closer and closer to her, and all of a sudden it hit her van, and she heard the thump thump, and then it pushed the van to the opposite side of the road. And I said to her, look, how did it push your van? So it collided with her van, pushed it to the other side of the road, and then she had to swerve back to get to the left-hand side. And there was no traffic at the time. Looked at the back rearview mirror, and she couldn't see anything. And she thought it might have been something paranormal or something, UFO related or UAP related. And so she contacted me, and I thought, well, I'm not quite sure how to understand what you went through, because if it was something that was green and teardrop shaped, and it wasn't like a spacecraft or anything like that, the only way I could really understand what happened is to actually, for you to go back and find out, is there anything there on the ground at the point of impact? And she couldn't go back. She said she was too frightened at one stage, and then she, several months later, she said, yeah, I'll go back. But I thought, well, forget it, because it's too late. If you didn't stop at the time and then go back and find out whether there's anything there. But she did do something. She did do a lot of proactive research into it herself. So she actually contacted a local astronomical society, and they confirmed that there was no space debris coming out of the sky at the time. There was no meteorites at the time, and so it was a bit of a conundrum where the force of the object was so strong that it could push her vehicle to the other side of the road. There was no, like, her tires weren't screeching when it was just pushed. I didn't understand that either, but we're doing the physics of that as well. We're looking into the physics of that. So what I asked her to do is to get a dust sample of her vehicle. And so she took a swab of what's called the Luton Peak. So Luton Peak is a little edge that goes over the van, that sits on top of the van, just pokes out just above the front windscreen. So she said that it hit it on the left-hand side. So I said, take a dust sample of that and send it to me, and I'll send it to the MUFON laboratories. But she also sent it to a research group called Paranormal Research Australia. and they have the facilities to do scanning electron microscopic analysis and what's called EDX. So it's energy diffusive X-ray, micro X-ray analysis. So we did the analysis on the sample, and we found out that there was a strange alloy that was coating her vehicle that's not normally found, and that's not normally manufactured. And it was a copper barium alloy that's 20%. So 80% copper, 20% barium. You can get that. You can manufacture that on Earth, but in a powdered form, but not a metallic. So these were metallic bits, like little micro crystalline or metallic bits that were found on her vehicle related to the incident. So it's a bit of a, like, we're not quite, we've closed the case, but we're still investigating, if you know what I mean. But what was strange also is that she received a call 5 minutes after the incident, and I can't quite work out what's going on here, because her phone was on the seat when the incident happened, and it sent a call to somebody in Perth, somebody in Perth Airport, and that person rang her back 5 minutes later because they were on the phone at the time that they received the call from her phone. And when they rang up, she said, "No, I didn't call you." And so we're looking into that. I thought it was very unusual that, like during the incident, like almost at the same time that she had this incident, her phone had made a call to somebody like several thousand kilometers, well, not several thousand. I don't know how the distance between where she was at. It would be at least 3,000, I should say, 3,000 kilometers away. Now, you can get scammers that can actually, take your number and then call someone else. And I've looked into that, but she wasn't getting any scam calls on her phone until this incident. And so we're trying to work out, we're trying to investigate this through Telstra as well. So I'm trying to get a list of the calls that was made on her phone. She did a screenshot of, the incoming call. I've contacted the guy that actually received the call, but it was just very, very cool, even very coincidental or very strange that there was a radio signal sent from this telephone to someone else's during the incident. So unusual in the sense that, it's this object that came from the sky, hit her vehicle, 2 thumps, pushed it to the side of the road, and then she had to regain, and she was very stressed about the whole thing, extremely stressed. As I said, we're still investigating. Was it a UAP? I don't know. Might have been. It certainly wasn't anything that we can explain that was prosaic. It left no dent in the car, so it wasn't when it pushed the car, it pushed it in a way that it didn't actually cause any scratches or dents. There's been instances in the States where this lady, and I don't know, I'm pretty vague on this particular incident, but she was driving her car and she felt a thump in the side of her car, and she didn't, like, she was just driving on the road. And when MUFON analyzed the side of the vehicle, you could see it was like there were, like, as if you had a vacuum attached to the car and pulled the metal out, and there's no scratches or dents or anything. It was as if the metal was somehow contorted but not scratched or there were no, well, there were certainly dents but no scratches. There was no physical contact in the sense that you could, and we looked into the Knolls. I don't know whether you know about them. There was a family that were driving along the Nullarbor Plains in the late 80s, and they experienced something similar to what this lady did. But they said that a UFO had come on top of the vehicle and pulled it up off the road and then dropped it back down and it blew a tire. Well, the same laboratory that had analyzed the dust samples on that vehicle had analyzed the dust samples on this particular incident that I'm telling you now. They didn't find anything anomalous on the Knowles vehicle, but they did find something anomalous, which is the copper barium alloy, which is very unusual on this vehicle. And I don't know what to make of it, but yeah, so it's still under investigation. It's something unusual. And we've had other incidences where do you want me to go on? That's one incident. Yeah. So there was a couple of incidences in New Zealand, which are very interesting. I've actually got a report right now that I haven't even started investigating, but there's a guy that's tracking a UFO right now in the South Island, and he that's Christchurch, isn't it? Yeah. So basically, he's taken multiple photographs and videos, and it's in a remote location. And so we haven't even started investigating that one, but he's got to the extent that he's actually, traveling, a couple of 100 kilometers to actually see this object and take photos and videos of it. But talk about New Zealand. We did have this another case where I have mentioned this before a few times, where there was an unfortunate incident where somebody was actually killed in a car by an object that went through the windscreen. And it's a very unusual case because when you first think of it, you think, okay, well, there are objects that fall off trucks and that go through windscreens and actually do kill the passenger. That happens a lot of the time. And when I got this report from New Zealand, it was from a lawyer who contacted MUFON, and MUFON told him to contact me. And he thought it was unusual, but when I looked at it at first, I thought, well, it's something that's just fallen off a vehicle. And he said, no. He said, it can't be, because the object was never found. And I thought, how can that be? And he said, well, I looked into the case, and basically it was a young guy. He was only 22, driving it was sort of like still dark. It was sort of like raining, but not heavily. And he was traveling in an area of New Zealand, South Island, in the Canterbury region. Can't tell you which road he was on, but he, when he came up to a cut-off road, an object, a vehicle did pass him, but an object came after the vehicle had passed him into the windscreen, pierced the windscreen, hit him in the head, and knocked him unconscious and then he lost control of the vehicle. His girlfriend was on the other side. The object had found its way out of the car through the back windscreen. So it smashed through the back windscreen and was never found. So basically, after 400 hours of police investigations in terms of searching the area, nothing was ever found. There was never any evidence that anything came off a vehicle, bounced off the road. Because if something came off a vehicle, the vehicle that passed him was an Isuzu D-Max, I think, from memory, a white one with a canopy. And I think they found the guy, and he says he had his canopy on. And if it came off that vehicle, it would have to have bounced off the road and gone into the screen. I just couldn't work it out. Anyway, so how did this object, which was the size of probably an 8-centimeter diameter or a round object, have enough inertia to actually smash through his windscreen, which is pretty tough, car windscreen, it's laminated. It's supposed to protect you. Smashed through his windscreen, smashed him on the right-hand side, I think it was the right-hand side of his face, and left a semicircular cannonball type injury, which is what the pathologist that did the autopsy said. He says, I've never seen anything like this. He said, it reminds me of the cannonball type injuries that people used to have. Smashed him in the right hand, killed him, went through the car, back windscreen, smashed through the windscreen, and just went off into space. Who knows? It was never found. So
the trajectory of that. It's like
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't going in a straight line. Like,
No,
doesn't
no,
make
no.
any sense.
It doesn't make sense. And how could it have pierced the windscreen, killed him,
And even if it
and
had
gone
side, it would have bounced in the opposite direction, right?
yeah. Well, yeah, but it didn't. It actually
Then
went
continued
through.
around.
It continued
Yeah.
through the car and then through the back of the. So the strange thing about this is that we've been trying to get to the bottom of this for about, I think, 3 years.
Mhm.
And the police had stonewalled us up to a point where we had to then appeal. So we put several FOIAs in, Freedom of Information requests, to get the actual, not so much the autopsy report. We know a little bit about the autopsy report. There was something in the media about it, but we wanted to get some information. We wanted to get the information, like the nitty-gritty behind, excuse me, the what actually, photographs of the vehicle, photographs of the actual hole that it left in the windscreen. The car was actually demolished, like it was completely dismantled, and they took parts of it as evidence, and they're stored somewhere. But the vehicle was then just scrapped. It was sent off for scrap metal, or maybe someone's got it. But the US military were involved in this. Why? Why were the US military involved? Otago University Geological Department were involved in it. There was another agency, which I can't remember, Scientific Organization, SDI, or something like that. I'm not quite sure. I have to look that up. There were 4 agencies involved in working out not only just the police and the forensic side of things, but they still haven't worked it out. And basically, we're up to the stage where we had to make an appeal to the ombudsman, and we're still waiting to get access to those reports, so we can actually make sense of it. It could be something prosaic, but I mean, if it is, well, then how do you explain the trajectory? It's like that, the bullet that hit Kennedy when he was in that magic bullet. How could the bullet have traveled through? I don't know the story fully. I've got to look it up again, but the trajectory doesn't make sense. The actual the force required for the impact to have killed somebody, smashed through 2 windscreens, just doesn't make sense. So it must have been something that had was controlled, had an enormous amount of inertia, and could actually stop and start again and smash through another windscreen. And so it was something that was intelligently controlled, I believe. So it's a very weird and interesting case that we're still trying to get to the bottom of.
Obviously, can't ask the guy because poor guy's not around, but
Yeah,
what he would have seen, I mean, yeah, what an experience.
So we tried to contact his girlfriend, and she refused contact. And we also, the family decided that they weren't going to give us allow us access to the records because a matter of privacy. But then again, it was all out in the media, so I can't divulge too much about what we're doing at the moment because it's very sensitive. So and we're just still investigating it. So, but so another interesting case, unfortunately involving a death of someone, which is very sad. But I'm just wondering, there's got to be some answer to this, and maybe that would put the family's consciousness to rest in the sense of that, they know what actually happened, and still they don't know what happened. I don't think there was nothing.
But yeah,
really.
it must be so hard for them to not know. I mean, I can't imagine what must be going through, through their minds or emotionally for them as well, because it's such a difficult, I mean, it's difficult in and of itself when the loved one passes away, but when it happens in these sort of very strange circumstances,
Yeah.
you know, where you don't get that closure or you don't get all the information of what actually happened, and it just leaves you wondering, well, why? Like, you know, what went down? So, yeah,
Yeah,
really.
so I'm thinking this could have been an extraterrestrial orb that, and you know, like they have been sighted. I went into the into the MUFON database and found several instances, even 3 days before this incident happened, where people were sighting orbs. Now you can't connect the two, I know that, but the sightings were not far away from where the incident occurred, and there was one really strange incident where there was this lady that reported to MUFON that an orb went through her wall when she was in her house. And so we had all of those reports. And I thought, it's interesting that we've got, you know, so many reports in or around the incident, you know, like within a month or within a couple of days.
Have you
of
had
the
any
incident.
psychics look into this as well?
No. But if you're psychic, I could. I mean, I
I
don't
was
know.
going to
Yeah.
say, I did get a few things as you were talking about it.
Oh,
I
good.
do
Yeah,
have some intel,
I can send you
which we
some
may have to
information.
discuss off camera. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, when these strange sort of occurrences happen, you know, I think they need to be tackled from these multiple sort of angles. And I know sometimes in the ufology community, you know, some people are very sort of like, they don't want to go near the paranormal or the psychic kind of thing, but I feel like they're so interconnected, you can't really sort of separate them, because when you have an experience, even if you see a light in the sky, you know, I think there needs to be some level of like energetic discernment as to what it could be. And as I shared with you earlier, you know, my journey was through consciousness. So I learned how to discern frequencies well before I'd seen anything with my own two eyes, you know.
Yeah.
And so like when people start talking about these experiences, I do sense the energy behind it and what it may or may not be. Just based on the frequency of what's actually present. And I think that element of it can sometimes help to sort of round off these experiences and put a little bit more sort of context into what might be going on. My personal sense on this one, you know, is that it's not actually UFO at all. But again, we can talk about that in more detail privately if you like. But you know, there's so many experiences I've had over the time, and I think, you know, with all of these MUFON sort of, not just MUFON, I know you do a lot of private research as well, but I think it's so important to have these different angles of assessing, is it extraterrestrial? Is it interdimensional? Is it some other paranormal thing? Or is it totally explainable? You know,
yeah.
I think that's where so much of the work goes into, just like categorizing these different things to go, okay, which ones are worth looking into? Which ones actually have, you know, proper evidence that it is extraterrestrial or interdimensional versus, you know, maybe it's some military something, or because I think the whole UFO sort of umbrella, it covers a very large spectrum of things.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Whereas for me, I'm not so interested in the military stuff as I am like the interdimensional and the extraterrestrial side of things. So, you know, I think there's a distinction between those different types of experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. So those they're two so like fairly unusual cases that we looked at. I mean, apart from that, we get a lot of cases where, you know, people submit reports with videos of lights in the sky, photographs of what they've seen, or just accounts, you know. And we receive sometimes information about cattle mutilations and you know, mutilations of animals that might be, you know, connected with a UFO phenomenon.
Have you come across anything to do with like crop circles or anything like that in your research?
No, I haven't actually. I'm very interested in crop circles, but I haven't. People very rarely report them in Australia.
Well, we don't really have the landscape for those types of.
They do happen. Like, I mean, we do get crop circles, and they have been reported. And they're not like the tully nests or anything like that, which you've got to distinguish a crop circle from something that's you know. So in the 60s or the 70s, there were a lot of reports of UFOs landing and then creating, you know, like an impression of the vehicle that had landed. That's not a crop circle. A crop circle is where you get a field of grain of sorts, or whatever, and real crop circles is where microwave radiation is actually used to form expulsion nodules in the actual stem of the grain, and that actually causes the grain to bend. And so there's no plank marks used in these crop circles, and they're laid down within an instant, like within a couple of seconds. The whole crop circle, an extremely complex pattern is, and they're mainly found in the UK, also in the States, but mainly the UK. They a lot of reports of crop circles are there. And we, as I said, we do get them. We get more cattle mutilation, like animal mutilations going on here than we do get people reporting crop circles. Although I wish I could, if there is anyone that has a crop circle in their field, let me know. And I'm also very interested in
there is
animal
one
mutilations.
property here in Western Australia that gets quite a few crop circles. I've visited this place myself personally, and when I say crop circle, it's not like what you would expect, with the tall sort of wheat crop or anything going down.
Yeah.
But just patterns that appear in the grass, and I mean, here in Australia, it's very sort of dry land, almost every, so
Yes.
we don't have these like tall grasses.
Yeah, it's not ideal for crop circle formation.
But you still get them. And especially here. So in Western Australia, there's a few suburbs out in the hills that have a lot of activity. Just you can go out any night of the week and you'll see stuff, So this particular property, it belongs to a friend of mine, and they get frequent crop circles on their land. And so I have visited at some points. They're not huge. I mean, some of them are just maybe like 1 meter in diameter or something like that most of the time. Small little circles. They just come and go throughout the year. And you can just see that there's a very distinct pattern, sort of imbued inside of it. But you don't get the same level of clarity in these ones as you do with some of the new ones, because like I said, the grass is quite dry, and it's not as aesthetic, as some of the ones in the UK.
So
but you feel the energy.
So it's pretty. You're pretty sure that no one's come up and done that, because there's no indications of.
It's more like, so in the grass, it's more just like you can just visibly see some sort of patterning in the grass or in the ground that just appears overnight. So they might just wake up in the morning and suddenly there'll be like some sort of pattern in the grass or something. And I've seen it happen. Like I've seen it there, and gone, okay, cool. And more importantly, because I sense the energy of it, I can feel the energy behind it. So I can tell pretty easily if it's a fake or a real one based on the frequency. And I can do that even just by looking. Like there were 2 crop circles that popped up in the UK recently. One of them I had a really great feeling from, and the other one I just thought, oh, that doesn't feel 100% like right. And then I later saw that one of my friends on Facebook, she posted pictures. She was actually there in the area, and she visited both of those 2 crop circles, and she showed one of them had these bent swollen nodes and had all the crop you could see was bent in the way that you described, and the other one, the crop had been destroyed. It was just broken, and somebody in a tractor and just done it. And I thought, well, like I felt the energetic difference between the 2, but then to actually see those photographs from this person who posted it on Facebook and to get that confirmation, I thought, well, wow, there's definitely something in this. Like there's the physical component of it, but then there's the energetic component of it as well. And I think having the ability to sort of tune in and sort of check the frequency, I think is just as important as checking the physical elements of it as well.
Yeah, I've heard of other people going through crop circles in the UK where they say they get I can't quite remember what they said, but it's the same thing that you described, where you feel this energy going through the crop circle, or some tingling feeling or something unusual. And also the crop circles, the genuine ones, sometimes I mean, not so much the complexity of them, but it's also the layering of the crop. Like you'll have several layers on top of each other where they're crisscrossing, and you sort of think, how could anyone do that with a plank? It's just so it's just the layering, plus also the fact that they're laid down. And also, like with the rapeseed, you get these very obvious yellow flowers that are blooming, and you get a crop circle laid in a full bloom rapeseed crop without disturbing the flowers. So like, how's that possible? How is it possible to not disturb the flowers on rapeseed and put down a circle? with planks. It just cannot be done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, that's it. Like, you have to sort of wonder that maybe there's something else going on. And the fact that they're not destroying the crops, if anything, says to me these beings are very benevolent. I mean, and I do have.
Well, the crop still grows. I mean, the stems still,
They're not
and I
destroyed.
think no, they're not destroyed. And also, there's a researcher in the UK who's I can't remember his name, but basically he's done numerous publications. He's got a PhD. He's done numerous publications of where he's actually got seeds from the plants that have been bent in a crop circle, and they grow quicker than you get a bigger produce from
Really?
yeah.
Wow.
They're actually, and
It's almost some kind of like modification. I don't want to say like genetically modified or whatever, but some sort of modification to that actual crop.
yeah, well, they might be in, like, I mean, I don't know whether you know much about molecular biology, but I teach molecular biology, and maybe the protein synthesis mechanism involving involving messenger RNA, tRNA, produce a lot more protein, so that the crop can actually at a faster rate could produce more seeds that germinate quicker and produce more grain. But it's he's actually done publications on it that have been peer reviewed.
I know that. That's just mind blowing. I love that.
It's weird, and if you trample them with a plank, obviously that would destroy the stem. It wouldn't. I mean, it's just got the same different effect on it, obviously.
Yeah. Wow. Fascinating. Cool. That's been a very informative interview today. Thank you so much for your time, Roger.
Thank you. It's been very interesting to know what your experiences have been as well. So
well, there's always, so many great stories in this space. It's just this is why I love this research. I love doing these interviews. There's always something new to learn. It's amazing. So thank you so much for your time today.
No problem. And it was I really enjoyed the talk. Yeah,
been a pleasure.
We should do it in the nighttime one day.
Yes, I'm sure we'll do more. I'm
the
sure
podcast in the daytime. Every time I do a podcast in the nighttime, it just has that extra creepy feeling.
Yes, it's the ambience, right?
The ambience, yes.
It's all right. Thank you so much, and thanks everyone for listening in.
No worries. Thanks.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to First Contact. I'm your host Eesha Patel, and I'm so excited to have this conversation about open contact with extraterrestrial beings. Come join me in the Facebook community where you can continue the discussion, or keep listening for another episode of First Contact.